The humans arrived on the battlefield and started killing aliens with the cold fury only Earthmen possess. Just moments ago, the Krelax fleet had been on the brink of total annihilation at the hands of the despicable Zorgonians. Dozens of once proud Krelax ships were blasted apart by relentless enemy fire. Reduced to drifting wrecks, venting bodies and rubble, Captain Zargok gripped his command console in grim despair as damage reports flooded in, weapons offline, shields failing, hull breaches on all decks. They were outclassed, outgunned, and out of options. Zargok opened his mouth to order a full retreat, to salvage any scrap that remained of his decimated fleet. Suddenly, a new deep voice crackled over the comm channel. "This is Captain Jason Reeves of the United Earthship Defiant. We hear you, Krelax, and help is on the way. Stand by for reinforcements." A tremendous human dreadnought dropped out of warp, cannons already spitting deadly fire at the Zorgonian ships. Perhaps today would not be the day the Krelax fell after all. As long as those human killing machines were here to even the odds. Emperor Zarthan reclined in his command throne, a sneer spreading across his scaly face, as he watched the pathetic Krelax fleet disintegrate under a barrage of plasma torpedoes. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The chance to seize the Krelax territories had finally come. The reptilian overlord had made meticulous preparations for this very day. Every credit that could be squeezed from the Zorgonian coffers had gone into the imperial war machine. Teams of the brightest Zorgonian scientists worked tirelessly to perfect shielding tech that could shrug off anything short of a supernova. Munitions factories churned out missiles with the power to split continents. Shipyards assembled gargantuan vessels that blotted out the stars. Zarthan witnessed the fruits of his efforts unfold, in the destruction playing out on his view screen. Krelax cruisers splintered into clouds of metal fragments with each hit. Their return fire fizzled out harmlessly against the Zorgonian defenses. It was like watching insects try to fight a blast furnace. A grin spread over Zarthan's face. It wouldn't be long before the Krelax were nothing but a paragraph in the history of his conquests. An example to the rest of the galaxy of what happened to those who opposed Zorgonian might. The Emperor was about to turn his chair around to accept a chalice of Mammonian wine from a concubine when his censor officer piped up. "Your Excellency, a new contact has arrived on the battlefield bearing markings and an electronic signature we've never encountered." Zarthan spun back to the main display, wine forgotten. There, dropping out of warp, was a monumental dreadnought, dwarfing his largest ships. Its strange, angular hull bristled with enough guns to arm an entire fleet on its own. "What in the seven hells is that?" Zarthan sputtered. "Hail them immediately!" The comm officer stabbed at her console. "This is Captain Jason Reeves of the United Earthship Defiant. Attacking the Krelax was a big mistake, you Zorgonian bastards. Let's see how you like fighting someone who can hit back." As soon as the human finished speaking, the new warship opened up on the nearest Zorgonian frigate with a full alpha strike. Missiles, mass drivers, and beam weapons converged on the target. Impossibly, the frigate's shields failed instantly. The hull shattered like cheap plastic. Zarthan watched in horror as the human ship tore deeper into his lines. Their weapons scythed through his prized armada like a force demon's claws through flesh. Zorgonian shields, the product of decades of refinement, couldn't withstand more than one or two hits. The Emperor leapt from his throne and stormed over to the section of the bridge where his gunnery crews worked. He cuffed the battery commander on the back of his head. "Get it together," Zarthan snarled. "I want all forward lances firing on that human monstrosity immediately." As his ships ponderously reoriented to face the human vessel, Zarthan felt his gut sinking like a stone. The realization struck him with the force of an asteroid impact. He had made a grave miscalculation. These humans were far more dangerous than he ever imagined. His empire had finally encountered a foe that could be its equal. Jason Reeves stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, his hands clasped behind his back, and his brow furrowed in concentration. The main view screen showed the chaotic swirl of ships locked in bitter combat. Hulls flared and exploded with each exchange of fire. The Krelax fleet was in bad shape, their formations shattered and ships rapidly winking out. "Status report," Jason barked. His first officer consulted her terminal. "The Zorgonian fleet is pressing their attack. The Krelax have lost 70% of their ships. They're not going to last much longer at this rate." Jason nodded grimly. When Earth had picked up the faint distress call from the embattled Krelax, there had been heated arguments at Terran High Command about whether to get involved. Humanity was still new to the galactic stage, and many in the Admiralty were hesitant to stick their noses into an alien war. But Jason had lobbied hard for an intervention. He understood the strategic value of the Krelax. They had a reputation as an industrious, trade-focused people with a network of colonies and mining outposts scattered across this region of space. Plus, they shared a border with Earth's fledgling colonies in the Oort cloud. If the expansionist Zorgonian Empire wiped them out and claimed their territory, it would put Earth's holdings at risk. So Jason had played up the threat of Zorgonian aggression and the importance of protecting a species unable to defend themselves. Those arguments had won the day. The Defiant was dispatched at flank speed to the Krelax home system just as the Zorgonians commenced their assault. Now seeing the Zorgonian fleet breaking apart under his guns, Jason allowed himself a quick fist pump. The decision to send the UES Defiant had been the right call. It was the most advanced ship in Earth's space forces, a sleek, deadly dreadnought that outclassed anything else on the battlefield. The Defiant's triple-armored hull shrugged off the few laser blasts that connected. Its own weaponry, banks of quantum phase cannons and neutron torpedoes, tore through Zorgonian shields like they were made of paper. The lizards had clearly never encountered human weapons before and had nothing to counter them. "Captain, the Zorgonian flagship is changing course, heading straight for us," the sensor officer reported. Jason leaned forward in his command chair. It seemed the Zorgonian commander had finally realized the humans posed the real threat. He was going to try and take the Defiant out of the fight. "Helm, come about to face them, but keep us moving. Don't let them draw a bead on us," Jason ordered. Maneuvering jets fired, and the mighty dreadnought swung its prow toward the oncoming Zorgonian warship, even as its guns continued to hammer the enemy fleet. Jason clicked the comm button on his armrest. "Sarah, I need the neutron cannons prepped for a full volley. Divert power from the aft shield array if you have to. When that bastard gets in range, I want to put him down hard." "Aye, sir," Lieutenant Commander Thompson replied crisply. She bent over her console, fingers flying as she worked to comply with his instructions. The bridge became tense as a coiled spring as the Zorgonian flagship bore down on them, trailing fire from a dozen different hull breaches. It was ugly, with a spiked prow and a bulbous aft section that glowed a baleful red. Almost twice the size of the Defiant, it began to belch bright yellow energy bolts the instant it entered extreme range. The human shields flared but held under the onslaught, flickering only faintly. A low rising hum started to build from somewhere deep within the Defiant. The neutron cannons were coming online, capacitors greedily sucking up every spare watt of reactor output to charge their magnetic accelerator coils. Jason watched the holographic range indicator, mentally urging the Zorgonian ship to close the distance faster. His fingers tightened on his armrests as the icon edged into optimal firing position. Almost there. "Fire!" Jason roared. A brilliant blue-white beam erupted from the Defiant's forward gun ports. It struck the Zorgonian flagship head-on. The alien ship's shields flashed, struggling to repel the neutron stream for a single second before failing spectacularly. The beam punched clean through the center of the massive vessel, vaporizing armor, decks, and crew alike. It exited the far side in a spray of molten metal. For a moment, the two halves of the bisected warship hung motionless in space. Then a series of internal explosions ripped them apart, scattering debris across the void. Cheers erupted on the Defiant's bridge as the Zorgonian flagship disintegrated, but Jason quelled any premature celebration with a sharp hand gesture. They may have just cut the head off the snake, but the rest of the Zorgonian fleet was still out there, and Earth had no reinforcements in range. He punched the fleet comm channel. "This is Captain Reeves to all Krelax ships. Form up on the Defiant, maintain a defensive sphere formation." Damaged Krelax cruisers and frigates, trailing atmosphere from breached hulls, maneuvered to cluster tightly around the human dreadnought. Together, they presented a concentrated defensive posture, allowing the Krelax ships to shelter behind the Defiant's shields while adding their remaining firepower to its own. Jason turned to Sarah, his expression hardening into the determined mask that had gotten him through 100 battles and earned him his command. "Tactical coordinate firing solutions with the Krelax. We need to whittle down the Zorgonian numbers and get them to break off. Relay targeting data and optimal attack vectors." Sarah, already bent over her console and conversing quickly with Krelax bridge officers over the comm, acknowledged his order with a quick nod. Jason settled back into his chair, watching the Zorgonian fleet regroup for another pass, stung but not beaten. Even with their flagship destroyed, the Lizards still badly outnumbered the ragged human Krelax defensive formation. It was going to be a slugging match, trading casualties until one side had enough and disengaged. And when it came to bloody, protracted space battles, there was no one in the galaxy more suited to it than humans. They would make the Zorgonians pay in blood for every inch of space. The Defiant would lead the way. Lieutenant Kazral gripped the armrests of his command chair as another volley of plasma torpedoes rocked his battered cruiser. Smoke poured from ruptured conduits, and the lights flickered ominously. He coughed, trying to peer through the haze at his viewscreen. It showed nothing but the twisted wreckage of Krelax ships, once proud vessels reduced to drifting hulks by the relentless Zorgonian onslaught. This was the end, Kazral thought grimly. The Krelax had fought valiantly, but they were simply outmatched. The Zorgonians had come with a massive fleet, armed with weapons that cut through Krelax shields like a hot knife through butter. Kazral had watched his comrades fall one by one, their ships blossoming into brief blazing stars before being snuffed out forever. Now it seemed he would be joining them soon. His weapons were depleted, his engines failing. All he could do was stare death in the face and await the final blow. Suddenly his sensor officer shouted over the din of groaning metal and venting atmosphere. "Sir, new contact dropping out of warp. It's massive." Kazral snapped his head around to look, expecting to see yet another Zorgonian monstrosity coming to finish them off. But instead, he saw a ship unlike any he had ever encountered. It was sleek and predatory, all sharp angles and bristling gun batteries. And it was huge, dwarfing even the largest Zorgonian battleships. As Kazral watched in awe, the newcomer opened fire, its weapons striking out with searing beams of light that pierced Zorgonian hulls like paper. Mighty warships, ones that had shrugged off the best the Krelax had to throw at them, crumpled and burst under the onslaught. It was like watching a child smashing toy ships. "Incoming transmission from the unknown vessel," his comm officer reported, her voice shaking. Kazral nodded numbly for her to put it through. A human face filled the screen, a male with sharp features and eyes that seemed to blaze with an inner fire. "This is Captain Jason Reeves of the United Earth ship Defiant," the human said, his voice calm and confident. "We stand with the Krelax against Zorgonian aggression. All ships form up on us. We'll take the lead." Kazral felt his jaw drop. The humans. He had heard stories about them, of course, everyone had. A young race newly arrived on the galactic stage, but technologically advanced, with ships and weapons beyond anything the Krelax possessed. He had always dismissed those stories as exaggerations, tall tales born of too much Altarian whiskey. Surely no upstart species could be that powerful, that fearless. But now, seeing the human ship, the Defiant, in action, Kazral realized how wrong he had been. It moved through the battle like a graceful dancer, slipping between lumbering Zorgonian ships and striking with lightning precision. Its weapons carved through the enemy fleet like a scythe through wheat, leaving nothing but drifting debris in its wake. And the crew. Kazral watched them through the comm link, marveling at their focus and professionalism. They moved with a calm assurance that spoke of extensive training and combat experience. No panic, no hesitation, just a steely determination to get the job done. Shaking himself from his stupor, Khazral barked orders to his helmsman. "Take us in tight formation with the Defiant, match their maneuvers and add our firepower to theirs." The Krelax cruiser surged forward, taking its place in the perimeter the humans were establishing. Other Krelax ships followed suit, the ragged remnants of their once proud fleet rallying around this unexpected savior. Khazral watched in astonishment as Captain Reeves coordinated the motley assortment of ships, human and Krelax alike. The captain's orders were crisp and precise, his tactics unlike anything Khazral had seen before. He used the Defiant as a shield, blocking the heaviest Zorgonian fire, while the Krelax ships darted out to harass the enemy flanks. It was a masterful display of fleet combat. And it was working. Slowly but surely the tide of battle was turning. The Zorgonian advance faltered, then stalled as they suddenly found themselves facing a united front of human and Krelax ships. For the first time since the first Zorgonian torpedo had struck home, Khazral allowed himself to feel a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, with these humans at their side, they could do more than just survive this day. Maybe they could win. He glanced at the comm screen again, at the face of Captain Jason Reeves, calm and resolute amid the chaos of battle. Khazral still couldn't quite believe it, but he silently thanked the gods, the ancestors, and whoever else might be listening for the day the humans came to fight alongside the Krelax. He gripped his armrests tighter and turned his attention back to the battle, ready to fight with renewed determination. The Zorgonians had started this war, but with the humans' help, the Krelax would finish it. Emperor Zarthan stormed back and forth across the bridge of his flagship, the Zorgonian Fist of Conquest. His clawed feet dug furrows into the metal decking with each angry step. He could feel the rage boiling in his gut, threatening to erupt at any moment. This invasion had been his magnum opus, the culmination of years of careful planning and preparation. The Krelax were supposed to crumble before the might of his armada, their worlds and resources ripe for the taking. It was all going to be so perfect. Until the damned humans showed up. Zarthan snarled as he watched another of his battleships consumed in the brilliant flash of a nuclear detonation. The twisted, burning wreckage spun lazily through the void before his viewscreen. Everywhere he looked, it was the same story. His once proud fleet, the most powerful ever assembled by the Zorgonian Empire, was being dismantled ship by ship. And it was all because of that lone human dreadnought. Shields down to 12%. Weapons offline, catastrophic damage to decks 7 through 12. Emperor, we must withdraw. One of Zarthan's tactical officers, an obsequious little lizard he had never bothered to learn the name of, pleaded from his console. Zarthan rounded on the officer, murder in his slitted eyes. Withdraw? Flee from these apes who only learned to walk upright yesterday? The officer quailed under the Emperor's glare but pressed on. Your Excellency, our forces are being slaughtered. If we do not retreat and regroup, the entire fleet will be lost. For a moment, Zarthan's hand drifted toward the blaster at his hip. It would be so simple to put this coward out of his misery. But no, he needed every claw at their station if they were going to turn this battle around. And turn it around they would. Zarthan was the Emperor of the Zorgonians, the master of the greatest empire the galaxy had ever seen. He had not clawed his way to the top of the food chain to run scared at the first sign of resistance. Bring us about, Zarthan barked at the helmsman. Set course for that human ship. Divert all power to engines and forward shields. The bridge crew looked at him like he had sprouted a second head, but none dared question his orders. Slowly, ponderously, the Fist of Conquest swung its prow toward the UES Defiant. Its thrusters flared white-hot as they propelled the massive warship into the teeth of the human guns. Sire, we're being hailed by the human ship, the comms officer reported, her voice quavering. Ignore them, Zarthan snapped. I have no interest in trading quips with mammals. He leaned forward in his command throne, his claws digging into the armrests. On the viewscreen, the Defiant grew larger and larger, its sleek, predatory lines a stark contrast to the bulky, utilitarian shapes of the Zorgonian ships. Zarthan felt his heart pounding in his chest as the distance closed. This was it, the moment of truth. He would show these upstarts the folly of challenging the Zorgonian Empire. He would crush them, grind them to dust beneath his heel, even if it cost him his last ship and his last breath. "Target their bridge," Zarthan growled. "I want to look that human captain in the eye as we send him to oblivion." The gunnery crews rushed to comply, swinging the Fist of Conquest's few remaining operable turrets to bear on the Defiant's command tower. The human ship's shields shimmered and crackled as they absorbed a hail of laser fire. But the Defiant was not content to remain on the defensive. Its own guns spoke, a long burst of blinding light that speared the Zorgonian flagship amidships. Zarthan was thrown from his throne as the entire ship shuddered and lurched. Warning klaxons blared, and the acrid stench of burning insulation filled the air. "Hull breach on decks 4 and 5, someone shouted over the cacophony. "We're venting atmosphere." Zarthan dragged himself upright, bracing against his command console. Through the haze of smoke and sparks, he could see the Defiant turning, bringing its broadside to bear. This was it, the end. But he would not close his eyes. He would not look away. He was Zarthan, Emperor of the Zorgonians, and he would face his death with the same iron will that had carried him through 100 conquests. "For the Empire!" he roared, his voice rising above the chaos. The Defiant fired, a full salvo from its main batteries, just as another explosion racked the Fist of Conquest's stern. Zarthan felt the deck buck beneath his feet. He saw the bridge crew flung like rag dolls, consoles detonating in showers of sparks and shrapnel. And then everything disappeared in a blinding white light as the world dissolved into fire. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support me, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. And for every comment that says, "I liked the story," I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.